The 90s had Jurassic Park, The Matrix, Titanic. Fine. Those are enormous films, and they deserved everything they got. But these 11 were sitting right there in the same decade doing something just as good, and almost nobody showed up. That still makes me angry. Let's talk about all of them.
Hi everyone! I started using an AI voice because I don't have a better microphone, and I have received a lot of criticism for that. This is my way of giving you better content. Please help and support my channel by subscribing and liking the video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye and enjoy the video.
Shane Black wrote this. Tony Scott directed it. Bruce Willis plays a washed-up private detective. Damon Wayans plays a disgraced former quarterback. Together, they investigate a murder connected to illegal sports gambling. That premise sounds like 100 other films. It isn't 100 other films. Black's dialogue is, there's a scene in the first 15 minutes where Willis is being beaten up by 3 guys and keeps making jokes, and the jokes keep landing harder than the punches, and you realize you're watching something that has a completely specific relationship with its own genre. It knows every cliché it's using and uses them anyway, because the execution is the point. The action sequences are staged with Tony Scott's specific visual language. That particular quality of light and movement that makes everything feel slightly overheated and slightly dangerous simultaneously. The chemistry between Willis and Wayans shouldn't work, and works completely because both of them understood they were in a Shane Black film and played accordingly. It made $59 million, should have made $150 million. One of the great buddy action films of the decade, and it just missed slightly. And slightly was enough to bury it. Denzel Washington plays a cop who puts a violent criminal, John Lithgow, away in a case that makes him famous. Lithgow's character spends years in prison with one purpose, destroying Denzel's life completely. Russell Mulcahy directed this, and Lithgow is genuinely frightening here. Not in a theatrical way, in a specific patient way. A man who has decided on a target and is completely willing to wait for the right moment. Every scene he's in has a quality of held breath. Denzel was between Glory and Malcolm X, and this film sits in the middle of that career trajectory, like a film that understood exactly what he was going to become before the bigger films confirmed it. The physical presence, the specific intelligence, the way he makes competence look effortless, all of it already fully formed in a film most people haven't seen. The escalation in the second half, the ways Lithgow's character dismantles Washington's reputation, his marriage, his career, one careful step at a time, is genuinely uncomfortable because it's methodical rather than explosive. Patient villainy is always scarier than loud villainy. It made $22 million. Disappeared. One of the most underrated action thrillers of the decade and one of Denzel's most overlooked performances. Gene Hackman plays a district attorney escorting a murder witness, Ann Archer, through the Canadian wilderness on a train while professional killers try to eliminate her before she can testify. Peter Hyams directed this remake of the 1952 Richard Fleischer film, and the train setting does everything a thriller needs a setting to do. Confined space, moving at speed, nowhere to go. The killers are on the train. The witness is on the train. Hackman is on the train. The Canadian wilderness keeps passing outside the windows as a reminder that getting off isn't an option either. Hackman is, look. Gene Hackman in the early 90s was operating at a level of consistent excellence that the decade didn't fully appreciate. This film, Unforgiven, The Firm, Crimson Tide, he kept showing up in films and being the best thing in them, and the films kept getting more credit than he did. The action sequences on top of the moving train are practical and genuinely tense. The film trusts its premise completely and doesn't try to be more than a tightly constructed thriller. Sometimes that's exactly enough, and this is the proof. Made $14 million. Forgotten immediately. Deserved significantly better. 4 friends on the way to a boxing match take a wrong turn into a Chicago neighborhood and witness a murder. Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr., Jeremy Piven, Stephen Dorff. The gang that witnessed it, led by Dennis Leary doing something genuinely menacing, starts hunting them through the neighborhood. Stephen Hopkins directed this, and the night Chicago setting, warehouses, construction sites, the specific geography of a city at 3 a.m. becomes a genuine character. The four friends are completely out of their element, and the film never lets them forget it for a single scene. Denis Leary. This is the performance that should have made him a serious film actor. Cold, specific, funny, in a way that makes the humor frightening rather than relieving. Every scene he's in has a quality of genuine threat that the film earns by never letting him be cartoonish. The soundtrack, hip-hop and rock artists collaborating on tracks specifically for the film, is one of the great forgotten soundtrack achievements of the decade. Helmet and House of Pain, Teenage Fan Club, and De La Soul. It sounds insane on paper and sounds extraordinary in practice. It made $12 million, disappeared within weeks. One of the most purely tense chase films of the 90s, and almost nobody has seen it. Rutger Hauer. London, 2008. Future London flooded by global warming, which in 1992 was science fiction, and now is just slightly ahead of schedule. A serial killer who tears out victims' hearts. Hauer playing a detective running on coffee and adrenaline, and something that might be a death wish. Kim Newman directed this British film on a budget that shows in approximately every scene, and somehow the cheapness works for it. The flooded London streets, shot at night, give everything a specific atmosphere that a bigger budget would probably have made cleaner and less interesting. Hauer is doing his specific thing here, that quality of barely controlled intensity that made him extraordinary in Blade Runner and The Hitcher. And the film gives him a partner played by Neil Duncan, who is the opposite of everything Hauer is, which generates exactly the right friction. The creature design, when you finally see it, is practical and appropriately wrong-looking. The film understands that showing the monster too early kills the dread, and holds back with a discipline that bigger-budget horror films rarely manage. Cult film. Completely. Found its audience on VHS and never lost them. Brendan Fraser plays a working-class Jewish kid who gets a football scholarship to a prestigious New England prep school in the 1950s and hides his religion to fit in. Robert Mandel directed this, and the cast, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Chris O'Donnell, Cole Hauser, is the most extraordinary collection of future stars in a single film that the decade produced. Every one of them went on to something significant. In 1992, they were just a group of young actors in a prep school drama that nobody went to see. What the film does that most school films don't is take anti-Semitism seriously as a structural reality rather than as individual bad behavior. The prep school world in this film runs on exclusion as a feature rather than a bug. It exists to separate certain people from certain other people, and the anti-Semitism is just one expression of a system designed to reproduce itself. Fraser is genuinely good in a way his later career as a comedy and action star sometimes obscured. The moral weight he carries in the third act, the decision he has to make about who he is and what it costs to be that person publicly, is handled with a seriousness the film fully earns. Made $14 million. Disappeared. The most star-studded, overlooked film of the decade. Sam Raimi directed a Western. Sharon Stone produced it specifically so she could star in it, using her post-Basic Instinct commercial power to greenlight something she believed in. Gene Hackman plays the villain. Leonardo DiCaprio plays a young gunfighter 1 year before Romeo plus Juliet made him a global phenomenon. Russell Crowe plays a preacher who used to be something else. A woman rides into a town run by a brutal man who holds an annual quick draw competition and starts killing his way through it. The visual language Raimi brings from horror, those specific Dutch angles, the whip pans, the extreme close-ups of eyes and hands and gun mechanisms, makes the Western genre feel genuinely dangerous again in a way it hadn't since Sergio Leone. Every draw is shot like a horror film. Every death has weight. It made $18 million on a $30 million budget. TriStar had no idea how to market a female-led Western directed by the Evil Dead guy. Critics were confused by the tone. The audience stayed home. One of the most visually inventive Westerns of the decade. Stone's performance, controlled, physical, emotionally specific, is one of the most underrated lead performances of the 90s. She built the film herself, and the industry let it fail. Catherine Bigelow directed this. James Cameron wrote it. Ralph Fiennes plays a black market dealer in squid recordings, direct neural recordings of other people's experiences that you can play back and feel completely as if they happened to you. It's set on the last 2 days of 1999, Los Angeles at the edge of the millennium, race riots, police brutality, a city that feels like it's about to tear itself apart. And underneath all of it, a murder mystery involving a recording that someone is willing to kill to suppress. The squid sequences, shot from the point of view of the person whose experience is being recorded directly into camera, no cuts, are technically extraordinary and genuinely disturbing in ways that the film is completely aware of. Bigelow understood that a technology that makes you feel everything someone else feels is also a technology for experiencing assault, violation, murder. She doesn't look away from that. Angela Bassett plays Mace, the bodyguard and former friend who keeps saving Fiennes' character despite having every reason not to, and it's one of the great underrated performances of the decade. She's the most competent and most morally serious person in the film, and the film knows it. $42 million budget, $8 million domestic box office, one of the genuine disasters of the decade commercially, and one of the genuine masterpieces artistically. Still ahead of its time, still waiting for the audience it deserved. Frame Time is genuinely going absolutely crazy trying to hit 1,000 subscribers right now. We are so close it hurts. Please just hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. 2 seconds. It means everything. Ice-T plays a homeless man recruited by a wealthy businessman, Gary Busey, for what he's told is a wilderness survival training trip. The other participants, Rutger Hauer, F. Murray Abraham, Charles S. Dutton, John C. McGinley, are the real clients. They're not going on a survival training trip. They're going hunting. And Ice-T is the game. Ernest Dickerson directed this, and the film commits completely to its premise from the moment the hunt begins. The wilderness sequences are genuinely tense because Dickerson gives Ice-T's character real intelligence. He's not just running, he's thinking, adapting, using the environment. And the hunters are given enough individual characterization that each one feels like a different kind of threat. The campfire scene where each hunter explains why they do this, what the hunt means to them, what they're trying to prove, is one of the most quietly disturbing scenes of the decade. F. Murray Abraham in particular delivers a monologue that recontextualizes everything you've watched before it and everything that follows. Made $4.3 million. Ice-T's film career never recovered from the box office. The film deserved considerably better than both outcomes. A group of genuinely useless superheroes, a man whose power only works when nobody is watching, a man who throws forks, a man who is just angry, band together to save a city when the real superhero gets kidnapped. Kinka Usher directed this on $68 million, and it made $29 million and got called a failure. And look, Mystery Men came out in 1999. The MCU didn't exist. The idea of a superhero film that was specifically about the gap between the fantasy of being special and the reality of being ordinary landed without any context to make sense of it. Ben Stiller, William H. Macy, Hank Azaria, Jeffrey Rush, Greg Kinnear, Janine Garofalo, Paul Rubens, Wes Studi, Tom Waits. That cast. In a film almost nobody went to see. The film understands something about superhero mythology that the MCU has spent 20 films carefully avoiding, that the desire to be exceptional is usually about not being able to cope with being ordinary, and that being ordinary is actually fine. That's a more complicated argument than any Marvel film has ever attempted, and Mystery Men makes it while throwing forks. Genuinely funny, genuinely strange, one of the great forgotten studio films of the decade. Chow Yun-Fat and Mark Wahlberg. New York, a Chinese-American police unit investigating gang activity in Chinatown, where the corruption runs so deep that the line between law enforcement and organized crime has essentially dissolved. James Foley directed this, and the film understands something about institutional corruption that most cop films simplify into individual bad actors. The system in The Corruptor isn't corrupt because of bad people. It's corrupt because the pressures and incentives and histories that shape it make corruption the path of least resistance for everyone inside it. Chow Yun-Fat brings his specific quality, that combination of effortless cool and genuine menace, to a character who is simultaneously sympathetic and genuinely compromised. Wahlberg plays the younger cop who has to figure out what he's actually walked into, and the performance is more restrained and more specific than his bigger films of the same period. It made $15 million. New Line had no idea how to market a Chow Yun-Fat film to an American audience that hadn't caught up to him yet. The timing was wrong, and the film paid for it. One of the most underrated crime films of the decade, still waiting for the rediscovery it deserves.